All right, hi everyone. Welcome to this month's Portals Community Call. It's April 2021. I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the call, and if you're a returning attendee, we're glad to have you again. If you're new here, I will have our main host and presenter, Nick Heduk, tell you a little bit more here. We have a special guest, Franco Musso. It's great to have him back as a return presenter to talk about advanced liquid techniques today. And we do welcome your questions. So if you have any questions at any point as we go, please use the questions block in the webcast interface, and we will be keeping an eye on that as well. We're also recording today's event. We'll be sharing that with you after the session ends. So without any further delays, Nick, I'm going to hand things off to you.
All right, thank you very much, Jason. There, yeah, let's kind of dive into it. As Jason mentioned, we've got Franco back with us, so really excited. So we'll try and get through some of this, boring content that I do up front here, and we'll get right to the fun stuff, as quick as we can here. So, just quick introduction. I'm Nicholas Heduk, President and Software Engineer with Engineered Code Consulting Inc. And I'm a Microsoft MVP that specializes in Power Apps portals. Basically been doing it for the last 12 years. If you want to connect with me and you aren't already on LinkedIn, please do that. And you can see my Twitter handle, blog, YouTube, as well as the Refresh the Cache podcast that I co-host with Mr. Nick Dolman. So, all right, moving past that, I'm sure you guys have all probably heard that before. Again, as I do every time, I just want to acknowledge and thank the folks at MS Dynamics Worlds for their support of this monthly call. They really do a great job of getting the word out and let everyone know, and hosting us here with their go-to webinar stuff. So really appreciate their support over the last almost year and a half. So. In terms of agenda, we've got a little bit of Portals news. Then I'll hand it off to Franco to do his magic. And if you've seen any of his Spotify stuff before, it truly is magic. Then we'll talk about the next Portals community call, and if time allows, then there will be as much Q&A as we want to do. So that's kind of our plan for today. So let's kind of dive into the Portals news. So really two big things happened over the last month. So the first one is that the Portals web API is now generally available. So that means that if you use it on a production website and you have issues and you contact support, they'll actually talk to you now. So this is great news. The web API is such a game changer. It allows you to really build out custom user experiences. So it's really gonna simplify a lot of projects. It's not like it's not like it's introducing something that we couldn't do before without kind of workarounds and companion apps and that sort of thing. But it just makes it a lot more possible to do little things. So like again, we're still gonna need companion apps for more advanced things that we need to do. But a really common thing would be like, oh, I just want to have like a like button or just a really simple form that I want to submit that just doesn't for whatever reason lend itself to entity forms or web forms. So you can accomplish those things really quite easily with the web API. So the fact that it's I think it's been out in preview for, I don't know, maybe a year now. I honestly don't even remember, but it's been quite a while. So hopefully those of you who are interested in that topic have had a chance to play with it. And now you can take all of your learnings that you've gotten while you were in preview, and you can apply it to production instances. So really excited that they did that. And kind of hand in hand with that is PCF controls. So PCF in Portals is now in preview. Now, really, this has kind of been you can think of these as related. The web API and the PCF are very much related, because without the web API, building a PCF in Portals, there was some value to it, but really the real value is now that we've got the web API, Microsoft can move on to the next thing, which is PCF. The fact that we've got PCF now available in Portals is fantastic news. Now, not to oversell it, it's not like you can just go and find any PCF control that you've ever worked with and just drop it into a portal. There's a good chance that maybe it won't work, because there are some things that are kind of portal specific. That being said, the fact that it's kind of an option now means rather than writing, JavaScript directly in the portal, using this kind of the more, well, maybe not more familiar, but the more kind of standard technique of PCF, is going to make it so that it is reusable across. So now that we know that we've got this thing for portals, now that we kind of know how it's going to look and work, we can start building out kind of more generic PCF controls that may work on a model-driven app and Canvas and portals and that sort of thing. So if you're looking for, so I've got a link there to the Microsoft blog post announcing that it is available in preview. If you're looking for kind of a more kind of step-by-step guide, we've got that link there. That PCF on portals is a great blog post from a fellow MVP about kind of how to use the, how the PCF on portals works. So that's a great resource, as well as the PCF gallery, which is the community but de facto standard for where people share PCF controls with the community, has a new category for portals as well. So I haven't checked to see if there's any up there yet, but yeah, no, it's great that the traction that this thing is already getting. So if you haven't yet tried, if you're kind of more on the pro dev side of things and you haven't yet tried building out PCF controls with portals, something to look into, because it's really it's going to open up a lot more doors as well. So and hopefully we're going to start seeing a lot of controls that you're going to be able to use across Canvas, model driven, and portals. So it's really very exciting. The other news I got here are just a couple of shameless plugs here. New version of PowerText, the Edge or Chrome extension that you can use to kind of autofill data. It's based on an existing plugin called the Auto Text Expander, which allows you to kind of have shortcuts or macros that you can type in that will kind of fill in data for you automatically. So a good example would be if you just type in the characters HB, and it can replace that with happy birthday. So you can kind of have these short codes that then fill in longer bits of text. And the reason that we have a kind of a special version of it, if you haven't heard of it before, with PowerText, what it can do is it can actually bring in data when you're working on a model-driven app or in Dynamics. You can actually use it to fill data in from other parts of the form. So for example, you can just type in FN for first name. If you just type in FN, and you can make it map so that it pulls in the first name of the contact that you're looking for, that of the record that you're on. So that's really useful for things like if you're on a case record and you want to put in put into the description the company name, rather than copying and pasting from the company name field or any of that sort of stuff, you can just create these little macros that you type in a couple letters and boom, it fills it in for you. The big thing with this new version is support for notes. So with the new kind of rich text editor for notes, it just wasn't the first version released just didn't work very well or at all. But now you can use this tool in the kind of the rich text notes field. So if you want to, if you're writing a note about a contact, if you set up your macros, you can have it fill in, say, the first or last name or the full name of your contact. So yeah, so I'm happy to say that was released a couple of weeks ago. The other shameless plug here is that there is a Power Platform virtual happy hour May 5th at 7 p.m. British summer time, which I don't know, noon my time maybe, so that would make it, I think, 2 Eastern. So they've asked myself and Nick Dolman to basically jump on for an hour at the virtual happy hour, and we're going to talk portals. So if you are interested in participating in something like that, there's the link. You can kind of see it on social media. So yeah, if you're interested in portals, which I'm assuming you are because you are here today, definitely something to check out there as well. So those are my 2 shameless plugs of the day. And that kind of covers the news portion of this. So what I want to do is give as much time as we got left to my good friend Franco, who, if you haven't seen the first call we did or any of the presentations he's done at the various conferences over the last year or so, you are in for a real treat. He's done some fantastic work with making portals look nothing like a portals you've ever seen before. And so in the last call that we did with him, he kind of gave us the high level overview of, kind of what techniques he used and kind of how he did it. But he offered to do a little bit more deep dive into some of the kind of more advanced liquid concepts that he needed to build on his portal. So I'm happy to say we got him back here for another session. And Franco, if you want to take it away.
Absolutely.
All right, let me just change see if I have the authority to
I
change
just
the
changed
presenter
them
here.
over.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yep, and we see your screen.
Okay,
I can
cool.
see it. Yeah.
Right, so to start with, I thought I'd show something completely different than the Spotify example, just for once. So we will get onto the Spotify clone, but are you able to see this screen where I'm in text?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, cool. Right, so idea with this is that something I put together for Victor Dantas' Portal Zero to Hero course. I've just done a session for that with Liquid. I thought it'd be useful to show in this as well. The idea being that the whole theme for that course is that it's like a student management system. So what I agreed to put together was this inbox that you see on screen. So I tried to style this so it looks and feels a bit like Outlook Online. And really, I thought showing that as well as Spotify might be food for thought in terms of just how much you can do with the UI. So two completely different looks, all using the exact same tools, essentially. So I've got a basic form, aka an entity form here on the right. I've got some fetch XML queries down here on the left, so I can see my open actions. I can select one of those if I want to view it in the form on the right. I can see those that are currently in review and those that are completed. I've got some custom code. Sorry, not custom code, that's a silly thing to say, but some what I would consider quite advanced Liquid that is comparing the GUID of this particular record. So I've left myself some helpers as well if I want to be using the web API or I want to be using jQuery with that. Now I've added this data attribute so I know the GUID of the record that that particular bit of HTML represents. And I'm comparing that with the GUID passed in the URL. And if they're a match, I'm applying this active class, which is what's styling this in such a way with that blue border and sizing it up so it's clear that that's the one I've clicked on. So I thought it useful to show just because it is something that I haven't done with Liquid before. So I've got a couple of things going on screen. I've got a number of fetch XML queries which are getting my open actions, my in review actions, and my completed actions. I've got the size property, so I can see there how many actions are in the open status, how many are in review, how many are completed. So I've got the condition that is checking, comparing the GUID of each of these records to the one in the URL. And finally, just close Teams down. And finally, I've got nothing fancy that I've done here particularly, but I'm embedding a basic form, an entity form within my Liquid template. Also, for this particular area, I wanted to use a rich text editor, the newish control that we've got in Dynamics that doesn't play very well with basic or advanced forms in the portal. So what I've got going on here is I'm using Liquid to retrieve that and outputting the fields directly on the page, so it's treated as HTML rather than as part of the form. So I'll take you for a quick tour through that template, then we'll get onto the Spotify stuff. So some of these bits, not exactly advanced Liquid, but I think some kind of interesting uses of it. So to start with, bog standard, getting the ID that is passed in the URL. So we need to know which message the user wants to view. So part of the reason for that is that I want to be able to send deep links out to the students so that when one of these is created with a status of requested, an email is fired out. As you can see here in the timeline, and that includes a link to come and see that in the portal. I'm using Power Automate for that. So I've got to get this GUID, go and retrieve the record because I want to, for example, output this subject, output this body. So that's the first thing I'm doing in my template, get the GUID and then go and retrieve the student action record that matches that GUID. I've then got my fetch XML queries for those lists down the left-hand side. So that I would assume if you've been using Liquid for any length of time, you've probably done a fetch XML query before. But as a reminder, you don't actually have to write the fetch XML. That just comes from Advanced Find. Or if you're cool enough to have had a go at Jonas Rapp's tool with the fetch XML builder, even better. So I've built these views. Here are the 3 lists that I see down the left-hand side, the open actions, the in-review actions, and the completed actions. And all that I need to do is just lift and shift this fetch XML into my template, but let Liquid know that it's coming. So all that I've done is wrap that within the fetch XML tags and name the query. By naming the query, I can do things like access the results. I can check whether there were any results. So for example, I've got first thing usually for graceful degradation is check whether there are any results. If there is, I want to output a list. And then I want to loop through and create a number of list items. So essentially that is what's provided this list on the left-hand side. And I've made that collapsible with some JQuery. And likewise, not specifically the realm of Liquid, but just with a view of being able to make this a more flexible template, that I've added this collapse and expand button. So you could, if it was a particularly lengthy message, that you can give yourself some more real estate on screen.
Franco, we just have a quick question here. Are you using handlebars at all in any of this?
No, this is all just HTML, Liquid, and JQuery.
Okay, good, thanks.
No problem. So some of where I start to get, not necessarily advanced, but possibly some interesting uses of it is using it to conditionally apply some classes. So like I mentioned before, I'm comparing the GUID of that particular message with the one that was passed in the URL. If it's a match, then apply that active class, otherwise don't. I've got a class of unread. So the idea of this is like with the Outlook UI, that until you've read a message, its heading appears in blue. When you mark it as read, Portal Web API will change the status reason of that message. And the next time I come and view this, that would be shown in dark gray like the other ones. I'm starting to use some more filters that I hadn't touched much in the past. So I think with the Liquid filters, they only really come into play once you've got a use case, once you're in need and you need to transform the output of some of your dynamics data, your model-driven app data, that they really come into play. So for example, I didn't want to show extremely long messages in that left-hand sidebar. I just wanted to show plain text. So I've used strip HTML to get rid of things like the bulleted lists, any tables or any formatting that might have clashed with my CSS or my portal template. And I've limited it to 150 characters. So in Dynamics, that could well have been thousands of characters. I think the maximum length on that particular field is over 1 million. Sorry, for that type of field. So I want to make sure that I'm not breaking the template. So I'm keeping it to a reasonable length. And another example where I'm outputting a date field, I don't want to output an ugly long date string. So I'm formatting that specifically as 2 characters for the day, 2 for the month, and 4 for the year. I think that's about as fancy I get with Liquid on that particular template. Apart from I'm using it there to trim a particular field. So that was another iteration of where we're using that out of the box rich text editor. It wraps it in a certain div. So I've used in different projects, I've used the replace filter in Liquid. So you can use that, for example, to escape things as well. So when you're doing JSON templates, perhaps instead of HTML web templates, you could use that to escape characters like, let's say you know that double quotes is going to be a problem otherwise for your JSON, that you can say, I want to replace that with an escaped double quote. So everywhere it finds double quotes, it'll put the / in front, sorry, the / in front of it to escape that, and your JSON will no longer break. So it's really useful where you've got the rich text editor in play, you've got some HTML content to deal with. Lots that you can do just with those simple filters in Liquid. I've got my entity form embedded. So as you saw there, it's giving me functionality like the file uploads, all just the usual stuff we could do with entity forms, but it's providing me a much nicer UI with it being embedded into my overall template rather than that take over the whole page. And apologies, I think my internet connection is struggling a little bit with the screen sharing, so I'll not hang on for a result. And there, just a heads up, is my where the portal web API is running. So if my internet speed wasn't at a crawl, the idea would be when I click that mark as red button, that it's going, finding that URL using it. I've created this code using Omar's excellent XRM toolbox tool, the portal web API helper, to go and update that record. And the update that I want to make is set the status region to red. So it will have changed from requested to red. So now on to some more advanced stuff. So back to the familiar Songify, the Spotify clone, which you might have seen already. So a couple of different examples that I've used throughout this. So I'm going to go to the albums page first of all. I apologize, it must be really painful watching my slow internet connection speeds third hand. I've had to live with this all of lockdown, unfortunately. So what's going on here, it's usually much quicker, is that as it's loading all of these album thumbnails, I'm using Liquid to take one of those at random and apply it as the background image. So currently it's using this one, Don't Believe the Truth. I'm going to refresh, and each time you'll see it just picks up a different background image. So it's taking this one this time. It's the exact same image, but it's got some CSS applied. And that's doing the blur. I could equally have said, for example, that I want to make that grayscale. So the idea is I've got my queries, same thing with my fetch XML tags within the Liquid, but then I'm doing something to make a change to that in the Liquid. So I'm using the random function, sorry, the random filter to say, get one of these album covers at random, pass it to a variable, and then with JQuery, I'm using that as the background image. So if that's any use to see, here's how I put that together. In fact, another little helper, not particularly a Liquid trick necessarily, but I like to leave myself clues behind the scenes. So last time it was having the GUID as a data attribute. This time what I'm doing in this div is I've added some helpers so I can quickly see at a glance which page templates in use, which web templates in use, what's a partial URL, which entity is it from, and has it got an entity list. So that's part of the power of creating your own web templates, that you can leave yourself whatever clues you want for the styling, for the interactivity, and what have you. So that particular one, the reason I was looking for that, I give them the worst possible names. They're always just proofs of concept at the time. And then when it comes to demo, you regret it. Okay, so I've got fetch XML query that's looking for playlist artwork. So going finding all artwork that is regarding a particular playlist. So I've got a naming convention where the particular note has got a subject of artwork. This is what my fetch XML filters are about. But then if we jump to the random function, see, very simple to use. Just like we saw with those other filters, I separate it with a pipe character, and then what is it that I'm looking for? So I'm taking my playlist artwork query, which is what I've done up here in fetch XML. And I'm saying of all those results for that entity, I just want to get one at random. So that's half the battle. That's got my a random result from the list above. So it just so happens these are images. It could have been for anything. So maybe if you wanted to have just a random tip of the day, if like Nick, you've got a back catalogue of tons of helpful articles, and maybe you just want to pull one out at random or show the a random category, maybe. In my case, it's showing a random image, and then I need to make use of that somewhere. So let's see where I'm making use of that. So there you'll see I've got some CSS that I've included in line with that template. The reason being that this is specific to this one template and it's reliant on that liquid. So that's saying I'm setting the background image using that special link, something that I use a lot for multimedia. That's what I'm using to populate the audio player. That's what I'm using to play the tracks to get the artwork. So it's your portal URL /_entity /annotation / and that is the GUID, the unique identifier for that particular note. So two steps really, three. First is to do the fetch XML to get all my results. The next is the liquid filter that lets me choose one of those results at random. And then finally, actually getting some output. In this case, I've done with CSS. And now on to something completely different. And this is going to be where we need to compare two different fetch XML queries. Or in my case, sometimes it's been quite a number of different fetch XML queries. But I'll show you the, I'm always learning on the go. So since I created the finished templates you're seeing on screen, I created a much cleaner version of it. So I'll show you both ways. So what I wanted to do in this example, sorry, I'll go to a different template. What I wanted to do is to be able to show, rather than always a like button, I wanted to show a like button if the user hadn't already liked that track, or show a check mark if they already had them. And as much as I searched, I couldn't find an answer to this, which is why I'm taking the time to show you. So excuse the dodgy alignment there, but the idea is that if I've not liked the song before, I can like it using the web API. Just click the like button. That goes create a like record in the backend in my model-driven app. As you see, it makes little sense to allow a user to like a song they've already done. So the challenge was that this like isn't part of this track record, and this actually isn't even a track record. It's a playlist, sorry, an artist track record. So there's quite a lot going on here. I've got the query to get the artwork. I've got the query to get the artist tracks. I've got the track, and then I've got the portal web API. So getting all the markup in place to make that work was a little confusing. So I'll show you what I've done, both the harder way and the easier way that I've found more recently. Apologies for jumping around between the screens. So another rubbishly named template. I will go in and tidy all this up at some point. Right, so this example, I'm not trying to justify my rubbish naming, but the reason it's called a dominant color is that I was experimenting with something where I could take the key colors, using a JQuery plugin, take the key average color from the image and have that bleed out into the rest of the template. So in this example, it's as a shadow over this part of the page, and also that semi-transparent nav bar at the top of the screen. It's not the fanciest thing, but that's actually using that color from the image. If I change that to full transparency, full opacity, that's what the plugin is deemed as the dominant color for this particular image. And I've used the luminosity mode to lighten that, whereas that's the actual color. So if I was to open a different artist's page, you'll see it's completely different colors when that loads in just a moment. It's not that beige, so this time it's a turquoise kind of blue. It's got a bit of a mind of its own, but it's a cool plugin that you can choose, I think, up to about 6 different blocks of color that you want to extract from an image without any human intervention. So without having to write CSS or edit images with Photoshop or anything like that, just does it all on the fly. So sorry, back on task. So I've got one query. I've got the entities tag getting me the artist record, and then saying find me all the tracks, sorry, all the likes for that particular artist. So look for all the tracks, specifically where the filter is where the artist, either the main or the featuring artist, equals the one passed in the URL. So in other words, get all the songs where the artist is that particular artist. And what I'm doing here, I needed a string that has got all those GUIDs in. So for all those liked songs, So you see that query does a few different things. It's getting tracks that are by that artist and where there is a like related to that particular user. So the logged in portal user. So then in order to use this particular method, what I've needed to do is use the join filter with Liquid. So you see I'm using these filters for all kinds of different things. I'm saying of all those results, select just the track ID field. So I want a list of all the GUIDs and join them using a comma in this example. So I end up with a comma separated list of the GUIDs of all of the songs that that particular user has liked. I could in fact output that on the screen or log it to the console or whatever if that was helpful. Then I'm going to get in all of the artwork that matches that particular artist. So this was another part of the puzzle that I needed to match the correct artwork to the correct track. So that's one thing that I need to do. And another is to work out whether the user has liked this song before or not. So yeah, another query is getting the tracks. So we've got the liked tracks, we've got all the tracks, we've got all the artwork. And then this is where it starts to get a little bit intricate. So as I'm looping through the tracks, what I'm checking for, so as I'm building my table, as you can see there, so I've got, I'm using for loop.index to actually do the numbering. So this is where that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comes from, as an example. I'm leaving myself some clues behind the scenes so that when I click that like button with the Portal Web API, I need to know which record it's for, what's the GUID of that particular row of data. And I wanted to create a record that that is human readable. So for example, Layla liked Rock and Roll Star. So I'm getting the name of the portal user and the name of the track. I've got to get that from somewhere. So that happens to be why I've dropped that stuff in the web template. So if I just have a look here, I've got the helpers behind the scenes. So the row of that table has got the GUID of the track. And then the table cell, the TD, tells me that the name of that particular track is Heaven on My Mind. And I get, of course, user.full name lets me get at that Layla Musso, that logged in portal user's full name. So I'm building the table, and then at some point I'm going to need to do a comparison to check whether the artwork that I'm interested in from one query matches the other. I've got some conditions. Again, I use if statements, if else, constantly throughout my template. So in this example, I'm getting either one or other of an image. So in this example, if we have got the artwork, then we're going to get the GUID of that artwork, and the alt text will read something along the lines of cover artwork for Wonderwall by Oasis. But rather than show nothing, like a broken image example, so unless I'd planned around it, this is the kind of thing that would show. So you see just the broken image icon, the image not found icon, not the best experience. So what I've done with my if statement there is to say, if you found the image, great stuff, show that, but if not, show this generic image, this artwork not found image, which is we'll see as an example. Not super stylish, but at least looks better than that broken image icon. So hopefully this is starting to come together. Also, we've got some additional logic in there, lots of reuse of the same liquid tags, conditions, filters, as you can see here. But in this example, if there's just the one artist, it'll output the one. But if there's also a featuring artist, it'll output that as well, separated by a comma. So this is where we're finally getting to what I consider some of the advanced liquid stuff. So this is where, however is best to word this, but I'm comparing two different fetch XML queries. I want to see where they intersect. So I want to check if this particular track is also in the list of liked songs. So as I'm outputting each song, check it against the list of liked songs. And if it appears in both, so if the list of liked songs, which is our comma separated string that I put together earlier, contains the GUID for this particular song, then just show that check icon, that tick, rather than a button. But if it doesn't already appear in that list, so in other words, this is unique, it's not already been liked by this user, then put in the button, put in the link for the Portal Web API. So again, I'm leaving myself clues so that if I look at one of these like buttons, I've got everything that I need when I run the Portal Web API to say that I know the name of the track, I know the GUID of the track that I want to update. Oh, sorry, not that I want to update, but that I want to associate my like record with. And I've also got the GUID of the user and the user's name. Although that's superfluous really, because we've got easy access to that in Liquid anyway. So to reiterate that one, I had two separate fetch XML queries, many more, but in this, for the sake of explaining this one, we had two fetch XML queries. One was all the tracks by this artist. So regardless of who opens that page, they would all see the same number of tracks or songs for that artist. Separately, I've got a list of all of the songs by that artist that have like records for belonging to that particular user. The next step is really I need the intersection between those two. I need to find out all of the songs. Sorry, as I'm outputting all of the songs, find out which also exist in the list of liked songs. So the best way I could find to compare them was to join all of those liked songs into one comma separated string. And to get that comma separated string, I used liquid filters for that. Liquid filters, as you might remember, are these where we've got a pipe character separating them. So I've created a variable using a sign, called it liked songs, get me of all the results, because we've got an array at that point, just pull out the track ID column, the GUID, and join it with a comma, and then that is what we're using for our comparison. So as you output each track, double check whether one is contained in the other. So if our comma separated list of tracks contains this particular track, show it as already liked so the user doesn't like it again. Otherwise, show the button to like it. Again, leaving myself clues all the way through. So that is what I want my event listener on in order to run the Portal Web API call, which I've got here. For anybody that's not seen it, the XRM Toolbox tool that Omar put together, awesome stuff, makes really easy work of the Portal Web API. Pretty much all you've got to do is just provide which field updates you want to make and add your event listener. There's always some JavaScript or JQuery involved to say when such a thing is clicked, this is when I want to fire that Portal Web API call. So I know it's not the subject of tonight's session, but just spend a quick minute going over that. So nice and easy, connect to your instance, load your list of entities. In this case, it was likes that I'm interested in. In fact, sorry, connected to the wrong environment. I'll show you that example for the student actions. So this is the entity that I'm interested in. I wanted to enable it for the web API. I can choose which fields that I'm interested in. So I made the status reason enabled for the web API, or I could just choose all of them. I've enabled, so that's a toggle I previously enabled error tracking. So that would let me see in the console, for example, if there were any permission errors, if I'd sent it in the wrong format, if there was any business rules or validation that I'd broken with my API call as far as Dataverse is concerned. And then when I save changes, that sets all the site settings up for me without me having to get my hands dirty doing it all manually. And then I've got some snippets on the right-hand side where, depending on if I want to create, update a single field, delete, clear a single field, that it provides stubs of code ready for me. I've pretty much just got to join the gaps there. Sorry, fill in the gaps. So that's the format of the URL for that particular entity. It needs a GUID and it needs to know which field in that example. I've done exactly that. I've said when that like track button's clicked, get some properties from that like button. So I had the item GUID, I had the item name, and then I'm running this function create track like. I don't always comment things to the nth degree like this, but useful when it's in a training scenario. So happy to share any of this after the session, but you'll see what I'm going ahead and doing. These are the fields that I'm interested in, that I want to set the name to the user's name and the name of the track. So like we saw here, Layla liked Rock and Roll Star. I want to set a lookup field of the track. So which track was it that they liked? So similar, this is the result from the one we created earlier. And finally, I want to set the customer. So in this case, that's a lookup to the contact field, and I'm setting it to the portal contact. And finally, just pretty much having picked up that code from Omar's tool. In this case, it was the update. Instead of update single, which update a single field, it was this basic update. So you see, it's very much in the same format that it's patch. Oh, sorry, post in this example is going to that specific URL using the data that I provided above. And these bits here are entirely optional, but I've used to provide a bit of visual feedback on screen so that once you click like, before you refresh the screen, you can see something's happened. So I'm changing the HTML of that anchor tag to show this OK, this tick or check icon, rather than still show the like button. So one of the drawbacks when you're getting used to the Portal Web API is unless you specifically do something to show visual feedback, there's no obvious clue to the user that anything's happening. So it happens in the back end super quick, but what you see on the front end is literally nothing unless you refresh the page. So to reiterate, we've gone over quite a few different liquid filters, some of my favorites being random, strip HTML, truncate, replace, which can be really useful for escaping special characters. So I've used that most heavily when I'm creating JSON web templates or XML web templates. Each have their special characters that you need to tread carefully around. There's also another useful one, another useful couple. Strip new lines is one that I've used a lot recently. And you'll find if you're doing your edit here within the Portal Management app, as you start to write a filter, you've got autocomplete there. So, for example, I can see that I've got strip new lines. So I could use that to clear any white space. I could perhaps say that I want to replace any paragraph tags with BR tags, as an example, or like I said, I want to strip the new lines altogether. I could even use it to swap out any HTML tags that I choose using the replace option. Or perhaps, like Nick mentioned earlier, where you've got things like text expands. Maybe if you were thinking a little further with this, you could have some text shortcuts in your content snippets and stuff and use replace to expand those things out. And then one final thing to show is the where filter. So this one has been reliable. So using the if statements and checking between whether item in the second fetch XML query also appears in the first. This is the more elegant way I found around it. So this time around, I've got I'm achieving the same result in essence, but I'm doing it with much less code. So I've got my two fetch XML queries, one for the attachments in this example, one for the tracks. And as I'm outputting each row, I want to show the image that belongs to that track. So I don't have to do the comma separated string or anything like that. I'm instead using the where filter. So what I'm saying is, in this example, only show me attachments where the object ID, so in other words, the GUID in the regarding field is equal to the track that you're outputting at this point in time. Simple as that. So I didn't need the string, I didn't need to repeat the if statement. Much simpler. So it took me a while to conquer. So what I hadn't realized is that it only seems to have the option of equals. So depending on your use case, if you're comparing GUIDs, makes perfect sense. That's absolutely fine. You only want equals. I guess it wouldn't make sense to have a similar GUID or only where the first half of the GUID is a match, for example. But there's other scenarios where I've wanted to do things like contains, and that just isn't on the cards. It only appears to be equal, unless anybody can correct me on that one. So as an example, what I've got there, if there are some tracks returned, which actually in hindsight could just be that, don't need to have the size. So if there's anything in the tracks query, for each track, I'm outputting the name, and then I'm outputting the attachment only if the GUID of that attachment is equal to the GUID of this track. Output that as an image, and finally, just close it off, separate that with the horizontal rule. So short of any questions, that's everything that I plan to show. Thanks for bearing with me.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. We've got a couple things that I can kind of bring to your attention. So we've got from Vladimir, he says, if you do an average, this was about 20 minutes ago. So think back to where we were at about about 20 minutes ago, but he says, if you do an average color, you can downscale the image to a single pixel size and then sample its color, no plugin needed.
Oh, cool. That I definitely didn't know.
Yeah. And then we do have a question from Robert here saying, what have you found is best for source control for Portal template code? Is there a clean way to extract it to Azure DevOps, Git, etc.? So I know I have some answers on that, but Franco, what have you found to be successful with your kind of web templates for source control?
Great questions. I'm working on a very big project in the day job at the moment, and I must admit it's quite a lo-fi solution that I've got. But I've got a Power Automate flow, taking a copy of all the web templates overnight every night, and each time they're saved, just saving a copy to OneDrive as HTML. So it's not specifically helping me with source control, but there's a lot of times I've had to rely on that to restore to a previous version.
Right. Yeah, and I know we did a couple months ago. We did a call just specifically on source control for portals. So the kind of the official Microsoft answer is to use something like the configuration migration tool to basically extract the portals data, because the web templates are stored as portal data, and yeah, basically you can extract it. It comes out as a zip file, and then there's community tools that you can use to basically take that zip file and extract it out into the individual components. So you're not checking in a zip file into source control. You can break it out into the individual records, and yeah, there's that. And then yeah, Mike makes a great point as well. There's the portal records mover from the XRM toolbox. So that tool is super simple, and that's what I really like about it. And it's what we've used for years as well. So the portal records mover, if you're just looking to get something to source control, you can run that. It gives you basically a zip file with all your stuff in it. So that's another great tool. The nice thing about the configuration migration tool is that you can use it for entities that are not portal entities, whereas the portal record mover basically has the list of all the ADX entities that are in there, but anything outside of that it doesn't touch. But the configuration migration tool is maybe a little bit more flexible, but certainly a lot more overhead and kind of learning curve to get it going. Vladimir's also wondering the underscore entity / annotation, how is that authenticated? It's a good question. I don't know. Franco, do you know the answer to that? Is that authenticated via entity permissions? I don't know if I've ever actually looked into that.
I don't know, actually. Yeah, excellent question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. I mean, it would either be entity permissions or nothing. So yes, I don't know the answer, but maybe I'll look into that. Tim's asking, why is the result of the where filter still an array that must be checked with the if statement below again? I'm assuming, Tim, you're asking that because the query was like by an ID, which you'd think would only return one thing. But I guess in theory, it's just more of a generic where, which a where clause can return. Where clauses typically return, or where filters typically return multiple things.
Yeah, I could have refined that further by using dot first. Maybe
you could do a first on it. Yeah, the first would get you your thing, and then you don't have to check it. Oliver mentions that you can use the entity list OData to retrieve data via AJAX calls. And and that's absolutely true. So if you're looking to retrieve data without using fetch XML liquid, you can use entity lists to expose OData. Oliver mentions he doesn't personally prefer that. He typically uses liquid, and I'm probably in that same boat. But yes, that's probably an underutilized function of portals, is exposing entity lists with as OData. Can you post the URL for a recording of the source control session? Yeah, they're all on. Let me see if I can grab that here while we're chatting. Essentially, they're all on they're all on the MS Dynamics World site, and they're all on the Engineered Code YouTube account. So I don't know, Jason, can you just, if you want to track down the link to the ALM thing we did a couple months back, and if you want to post the MS Dynamics World link in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I'll find that.
Oliver says he's nearly sure it's via entity permissions. So I think that's the most sure of anyone. But yeah, maybe worth something to look into. It's likely using link on the back end. Yeah, it probably is using, it is using link. I'm not sure if most people know this, but ADX Studio, in addition to build portals, built the link provider for CRM as well. So before Microsoft bought all of ADX Studio, they bought the link provider from ADX Studio. Microsoft, we've got David, and I know we're kind of over time here. Obviously, anyone can feel free to jump off, but I'll keep answering questions until they stop. Franco, I'm not sure if you can hang on, but
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where are we here? Microsoft Portal support recommends a single entity list per page for the performance reason. There's a customer need for many entity lists per page. Do you have any recommendations to increase page load? For example, 15 entity lists per page. Interesting. I have not, I guess I've never asked Microsoft support about the recommendation of a single entity list per page. I mean, it seems like a pretty easy thing for them to say, just be like, oh, we just recommend a little bit of data on every page. And I mean, that's an easy thing. That's not, I mean, I've got experience putting 5 or 6 on a page. I don't know if I've ever done 15, so I can see maybe how that gets a little bit overwhelming, but all of that happens asynchronously. So honestly, I'm not sure, like the initial page load should kind of happen immediately, because with entity lists, it all happens kind of after the fact. I guess maybe unless you're doing it, no, even if you do it in liquid, it happens asynchronously. So yeah, I personally don't have any recommendations on how to increase to make the page load faster when you've got 15 entity lists. Usually the biggest thing is your entity permissions will slow down your entity lists. And then I've got, so Vladimir's saying the entity list OData is not secure. Is that true? Again, I don't really use it. So the entity list OData doesn't enforce entity permissions?
Yeah, I believe the configurable option on entity list, that's correct. So if you wanted to enforce entity permissions, you'd kind of go the way around where you create a JSON web template using fetch XML, and then it would respect permissions.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I would have thought that they would respect entity permissions, but again, it's not something that I use a lot, so I'm not sure offhand.
Yeah,
and then Vladimir's,
I seem to remember with a health warning for that reason.
Okay. And then a single entity list per page means using the MVC template control. If created using subgrids or by fetch XML, there's no limit. Yeah, but I mean, you can also use the a single entity list. I mean, there's an entity list liquid control, so you can have as many entity lists that you want on a page by using the entity list liquid control. So you can, and we basically mirrored similar things to dashboards in a model-driven app. We've done those with entity lists by using the liquid tag. And there's no, whereas with entity forms, it's only support to have a single one on a page. I'm not aware of there being any specific limit to how many entity lists you can have on a page. Beyond, of course, if it runs slow, that's one thing. But I think it's technically supported to have more than one entity list on a page. We've done that many times.
Yeah, I find that's a nice with the dashboard kind of use case, isn't it?
Yep.
If you have a bit of mashup from different entities together, and you have the compact option as well to let them take up less space.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Well, again, Franco, really appreciate your time today. I guess we'll kind of wrap up there. I'll announce kind of quickly here that we'll do our next call on May 20th at the kind of same time here. So May 20th, and I'll try and do a better job this month of sending out the email. I realized this morning that I didn't really broadcast that very well. But May 20th is the next one. If anyone has any topic ideas, I haven't kind of solidified a topic idea yet for next month. So if anyone wants to either speak or has some topics they want covered, you should know how to reach me. All my contact information is available, so please let you know. But again, thank you to Jason, MS Dynamics World. Thank you, Franco, and Jason. Unless there's anything else, I think we can call it a day.
Yeah, that's it. I think we can wrap it up. Thanks so much, Franco. Really appreciate you coming back.
You're very welcome. Great to be back.
Yeah. And we'll be following up with information on the recording soon. Thanks to everyone for all your time and attention and questions, and we'll wrap it up there.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.